The mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. David Hawkins. Imagine this. You're parsing every syllable of a conversation that happened 7 years ago, rewriting it, polishing your comebacks until they gleam like knives. The clock ticks, but time isn't moving forward. It's folding. Each breath pulls you deeper into a labyrinth where thinking feels like control. And yet the walls keep closing in. Why? Why does your mind, the very tool you use to dissect the universe, turn against you in the silence? Why does the act of solving tighten the knots? You've been taught that to think is to ascend, to outmaneuver chaos with reason. But here, in the hour no one admits exists, a darker truth whispers. Your greatest insights have become rituals of fear. Every scenario dissected, every contingency mapped. Yet the more you plan, the less you inhabit the world. What if overthinking isn't a flaw to fix, but an addiction to confront? Not a lack of discipline, but a perverse form of devotion, a shrine built to the god of maybe. Philosophers have long dueled with this specter. Sartre called it bad faith, the lie we tell ourselves to avoid the vertigo of freedom. Schopenhauer saw it as the pendulum between pain and boredom. Yet here you are, suspended, neither choosing nor refusing, just evaluating. What are you bargaining for? What celestial scorekeeper demands this tax of endless analysis? Or is this the work of something older, a survival mechanism gone rogue, mistaking modern ambiguity for a predator in the tall grass? This is the great contradiction. The mind evolved to solve problems, yet in the absence of tigers or famine, it invents labyrinths. You've conflated thinking with living, and now every uncharted moment feels like failure. But what waits in the storm's eye, the clarity beyond calculation, is not an answer, but a surrender. To stop thinking about the lock, and finally feel the key in your hand. This addiction didn't begin in your mind. It began in the unspoken rules of a world that worships answers but punishes questions. Jung warned of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we exile to darkness. But what happens when society itself has a shadow? When entire cultures condemn ambiguity, label uncertainty as weakness, and sell you mindfulness as a band-aid for a bullet wound. You learned to fear the void, so you filled it with noise. Freud reduced this to Oedipal dramas. He missed the deeper fracture. Viktor Frankl wrote that the existential vacuum emerges when we lose sight of meaning. But meaning isn't lost, it's buried under layers of borrowed identities. You were taught to think in loops, achieve, then question, succeed, then doubt, love, then armor yourself against loss. Nietzsche saw it first. Whoever fights monsters must see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And here you are, both prisoner and warden of a mind, fed on paradox. Modern neuroscience names this the default mode network, the brain's autopilot for self-referential thought. But Schopenhauer's ghost haunts the data. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. Your overthinking isn't a choice. It's a biological betrayal. Ancient threats required muscle. Modern threats require prophecy. Your amygdala now fears potential. A tax bill, a text's punctuation, the way they might have glanced at you. Evolution gifted you a diamond-tipped mind, and you use it to dig your own grave. Huxley's Brave New World was a warning, not a manual. Yet here we are, drowning in information, starving for wisdom. Sartre called hell other people. But the deeper hell is the self split by infinite mirrors. You overthink because you've been sold two lies. 1. Life is a problem to solve. And 2, you're the solver. But what if the mind isn't a surgeon, but a sorcerer, conjuring threats to justify its existence? The Zen masters knew. The obstacle is the path. But your addiction? It's the path, made of quicksand. This is the cost of overthinking. Invisibility. While the world moves, you're trapped in a parallel dimension, a limbo of hypotheticals. Sartre called it the agony of choice. But it's worse than that. It's the erasure of presence. Every moment spent dissecting the future is a moment stolen from the now. And yet, the now is all we ever truly have. So why does it feel like quicksand? Why does the act of thinking about living replace the act of living itself? This is the paradox of overthinking. It promises control, but delivers paralysis. It whispers, if you just think hard enough, you'll find the answer. But the answer never comes. Instead, you're left with a heart bound by fear and a mind that mistakes analysis for action. Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. But what happens when that space becomes a prison? When every stimulus triggers a cascade of what-ifs that drown out the possibility of response? Kierkegaard understood the weight of freedom. To choose is to risk, and to risk is to feel the vertigo of possibility. But overthinking isn't just anxiety. It's avoidance. It's the mind's way of saying, if I don't choose, I can't fail. Yet in refusing to choose, you've already failed. You've traded the richness of life for the safety of speculation. The mirrors in this cafe aren't just reflections, they're warnings. Each version of you is a path not taken, a life unlived because you were too busy thinking about living. This is the ultimate consequence of overthinking: self-erasure. The more you analyze, the less you exist. The doppelganger isn't a monster, it's you. The version of you that's been silenced by doubt, suffocated by second-guessing. The dancers around the fire? They've embraced the chaos. They've traded certainty for freedom, analysis for action. And here you stand, clutching your hourglass, watching the sand flow backward. What are you waiting for? Permission? A guarantee? The truth is, there are no guarantees. There's only this moment, this choice, this breath. Breaking free begins with a single, radical act: stopping. Not stopping thought, that's impossible, but stopping the identification with thought. The canvas before you isn't empty, it's waiting. Overthinking thrives on the illusion that life is a puzzle to solve. But what if it's a painting to create? What if the brush in your hand isn't for fixing mistakes, but for making them beautiful? This is the first step of rebellion, to see your mind not as a master, but as a tool that can be set down. The second step is to embrace imperfection. Nietzsche said, "You must become chaotic to give birth to a dancing star." Overthinking is the enemy of chaos. It demands order, predictability, control. But life is not a spreadsheet. It's a dance. And in every dance, there are missteps. The tree you're painting isn't perfect, but it's alive. Its crooked branches tell a story. Its scars are proof of growth. What if your mistakes aren't failures, but brushstrokes in a masterpiece you can't yet see? The third step is to move. Not in the direction of certainty, but in the direction of aliveness. Viktor Frankl wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." Overthinking keeps you rooted in place, analyzing the map instead of exploring the territory. But the field before you isn't a problem to solve. It's an invitation to feel the grass under your feet, the wind on your skin, the fire's warmth on your face, to trade the safety of knowing for the thrill of being. This is the final step, to participate. Overthinking is a spectator sport. It keeps you in the stands, analyzing the game instead of playing it. But life is not a game to be watched. It's a song to be sung. The drum in your hands isn't just an instrument. It's a reminder that you are not separate from the world. You are of it. The fire, the stars, the tree, the rhythm, they are all parts of you, waiting to be embraced. And as you play, you realize the rebellion wasn't against overthinking. It was against fear. And in its place, you found something far more powerful: trust. This is the moment of reckoning. The void isn't empty. It's full of everything you've ever thought, felt, feared, and dreamed. Overthinking was never the enemy. It was a symptom of a deeper truth. You've been searching for meaning in the wrong places. The fragments around you aren't just memories, they're clues. Clues to a puzzle you've been trying to solve your entire life. But what if the puzzle isn't meant to be solved? What if it's meant to be dissolved? The ultimate truth is this: you are not your thoughts. You are not your fears. You are not the sum of your choices or the weight of your regrets. You are the space in which these things arise. The galaxy inside you isn't a problem to solve. It's a universe to explore. And the doorway, it's not a destination. It's a return to the only moment that ever truly exists: now. Overthinking was your attempt to outrun the now, to control it, to perfect it. But the now doesn't need perfecting. It just is. And so are you. This is the final realization. You are enough. Not because you've solved every problem or answered every question, but because you exist. The waves don't ask for permission to crash. The stars don't seek approval to shine. And you don't need to earn your place in the universe. You already have it. Overthinking was your attempt to deserve what was already yours. But the truth is, you don't need to deserve it. You just need to accept it. This is the end of the journey and the beginning of everything else. The door was never locked. The cage was never closed. Overthinking was just a story you told yourself. A story about control, about worth, about fear. But stories can be rewritten. And now, as the sun rises on a new day, you have a choice: to step into the light or to keep telling the same old story. The birds don't worry about the wind. They simply fly. The sun doesn't question its purpose. It simply shines. And you don't need to think your way into being. You already are. So, take the step. The door is open. The world is waiting.